For the longest time, one of the sentiments within the WWE was that they can't build new stars, that they don't look to new talent to start carrying the company forward. Sometimes stars who are right in front of them don't reach their full potential. While some of that is true and has derailed people from reaching their full potential, every now and then we see a really quick rise. We see someone show up and show out, and in no time, they become one of the premier faces of the company. That's Bianca Belair's story, someone who didn't watch wrestling growing up. Really, this wasn't an end goal for her, but got an opportunity, took it, and made the most of it. Someone who's got a unique look, a great moveset, and exudes a very natural camera presence. In her time on the main roster, she's always been at or near the top, performing on the biggest stages the company has to offer. Bianca grew up in a sporting family with 3 brothers and a sister. When she was young, she started track at 5 years old. She herself revealed that at one point she was the #1 hurdler in the entire country. She suffered from bulimia, throwing up her food because she wanted to lose weight. When she started to struggle in high school and she heard her coaches talk about it, Bianca became obsessed with making her body be something that it just wasn't. She got a full scholarship to the University of South Carolina, and that's where things started to go off the rails. She started partying, and her coaches didn't like where she was going as her performances started to suffer. So she went back to throwing up her food, which turned to binge eating disorder. So she had all these struggles going on, but instead of facing her issues head on, she thought that going to a different college would help, but it didn't, to the point where she stopped her medication. She got depressed and even tried to kill herself. That brought her to a psychiatric hospital, and from there she picked herself up. She then embraced her body and being more muscular when she saw CrossFit. Did that for a while until she got sidelined by something called slipping rib syndrome. Thankfully though, Mark Henry sent her a message saying that he could get her a tryout with the WWE. Clearly he saw something that she had to give the company, but she was told that all Henry could give her was a chance. Everything else was up to her from there. This came after Henry left a comment on one of her photos. She thought it was fake. Eventually she talked to him, and he just knew that Bianca had something to her, from the performance aspect to the look, and Henry believed it would translate well to the WWE. She'd done everything: gymnastics, basketball, track, cheerleading, and she came in without much of a plan. But 2016 she was signed to the company. In 2017 she competed in the Mae Young Classic, and the dominance in athletics really helped as she took to wrestling very quickly and gave off a natural confidence. The look with her oversized braid really stood out. The 450, her character of being cocky and having the skill to back it up. Her husband Montez Ford told her to keep the braid, as when people who were unfamiliar with watching her left shows, they'd always remember her as the girl with the braid. She toured around in NXT with a lot of showcase matches, and it was really in 2018 where she started to find her groove. That was the year where Lita gave her the cosign, saying that she's got an intangible that just kept her wanting to see more. Charlotte said much of the same. Very quickly, she stood out in a group of WWE's best athletes. At the Performance Center, she continued to impress, always finishing at or near the top in every competition. The raw strength and work ethic wasn't ever a question. On NXT, she built up a winning streak, and that eventually led to a championship match with Shayna Baszler, which she ended up losing at TakeOver Phoenix. Her career in NXT went on for a while, and she had great matches. She developed at a steady rate, and whenever she was on, she always did something that left the crowd or other superstars talking. Whether it was her impressive feats of strength or her exuberant ring gear, which she made herself, she was always a talking point. By 2020, the talent that NXT fans were aware of became known to a wider audience. Bianca started at number 2 in the 2020 Royal Rumble against Alexa Bliss, and in the match she spent the most amount of time out of anyone at 33 minutes and 20 seconds. She had 8 eliminations and looked uber impressive. It was just a taste for what was soon to come. Her last really big match in NXT came against Rhea Ripley at TakeOver Portland of the same year, which she ended up losing. She never won the NXT Women's Championship, even though she was one of the biggest stars in a stacked NXT Women's division. And for someone who never won the NXT title, you'd think that this would be another case of strap them with a gimmick that just doesn't work, make them look like a fool upon arrival. And I'm not saying that for no reason. It's happened many times where people come from NXT and at the very last second get stripped of whatever made them unique. They lose a lot of what drew fans to them in the first place, and what ends up happening is a complete overhaul. With Bianca, that didn't happen. The company kept everything the same. She got called up at WrestleMania 36, coming in and making the save for the Street Profits. This was in March, but by October she was drafted to SmackDown and had a fantastic performance at that year's Survivor Series, where despite not winning, she shined extremely bright. The company previously had been running vignettes where she outdid male counterparts in various competitions to show how gifted she was. She called herself the EST, the same thing that she did in NXT, which references multiple different words that end in EST. Best, quickest, fastest, roughest, toughest, you get the deal. As the calendar turned to 2021, she entered the Women's Royal Rumble at number 3, going on to last just under 57 minutes and eliminating Rhea Ripley to get the win. A year after her amazing performance, here she was, and it looked like WWE were all in on Bianca. She selected Sasha Banks as her champion of choice, and the match was on. The story, though, wasn't anything too crazy. It was the normal can they coexist storyline, which I'm sure if you've watched wrestling even once, you know exactly how it pans out. However, the eventual match was very, very well received. The two going on to main event night 1 of WrestleMania, the first 2-night WrestleMania that was actually in front of fans. Both women displaying their athleticism, Bianca showing her power, Sasha countering everything that was thrown at her, but it was a braid whip to the stomach of Sasha and her signature KOD that got her the win and her first women's championship. If you were to type up KOD, the first thing that would come up would be J. Cole's album, which is what she named it after. The acronym, of course, stands for Kiss of Death, matching the lyrics to, of course, the move and her signature ring attire. But nonetheless, in just over a year, a new star was made. Sasha and Bianca became the first 2 black women to main event WrestleMania, and from there, brick by brick, every week you saw Bianca get better, get more comfortable on the mic. However, since the match was so well received, WWE wanted to run a rematch at SummerSlam 2021 in Vegas, but at the last moment, Sasha Banks was pulled from the event, a reason that still hasn't been given to this day. WWE then made Carmella come out, but it was just a swerve, as out came Becky Lynch, who had been out for over a year as she welcomed her first child. Becky had a much longer main roster journey than Bianca. She too made history, becoming one of the first 3 women to main event WrestleMania, eventually going on to win. Now it was essentially 2 of WWE's biggest women stars squaring up one-on-one, and the expectations were high, but what ended up happening was confusing. A 26-second match, and Bianca Belair, whose momentum was only getting better on a weekly basis, ate the pin and lost. This stirred up a lot of debate as to what WWE was doing with Bianca. Just a few months ago, she had won in the WrestleMania main event. Here she was, losing in seconds. The whole situation was just confusing, but with retrospect, this was the beginning of a trilogy where you could say she met her greatest rival. The rest of 2021 for Bianca was spent trying to get back the SmackDown Women's Championship. She came oh so close, but the time wasn't yet. Continued to have great performances, another Survivor Series where Bianca crushed it. In storyline, she overcame a 4-on-1 deficit to become the sole survivor for Raw, where she'd been moved in the draft. Well, at the end of the year, she was named Pro Wrestling Illustrated's top female wrestler in the world. If you want to look at things from a rookie year perspective, from her debut on the Raw after WrestleMania 36 to WrestleMania 37, it's quite historic, ranking up there with the best. Regardless, it was now time to continue the Becky and Bianca story. She entered the Royal Rumble again, but failed to win, instead winning the Elimination Chamber to become the number 1 contender to the Raw Women's Championship, which was held by Becky Lynch. The match was made for WrestleMania, and in her WWE main roster sophomore year, she was once again going to take on one of the biggest women stars in the company. When we got to WrestleMania, they absolutely tore the house down, delivering one of the best women's matches in WWE history, and Bianca got her revenge. It all came full circle. The match was another hit in Bianca's small yet very impressive WrestleMania collection. The trilogy capped off at SummerSlam 2022, where Bianca beat Becky in another good match. Only makes sense as a year previous everything seemed up in the air. Bianca went on to have a 300+ day title reign after beating Becky Lynch at Mania, where she wrestled a who's who in the women's division. And her rise is meteoric. She took the thing so naturally and worked hard to get where she's at. And the wildest part is she's still improving as time goes on, because we're very early into this story. Still young and with more stories and layers to add. No links to the wrestling business, no experience, not even a fandom as I mentioned before, a completely homegrown talent, someone who just got better year by year, which shows that when the right person comes along, WWE can pull the trigger and create a superstar. From the core, no independence, no other companies. From age 27, she was in WWE's developmental system. In just a very short amount of time, she's ascended to the top of the WWE card and become one of their biggest and most popular stars. Who knows, by the end of her career, that EST might come into play as the greatest WWE women's wrestler of all time.